I'm gonna begin. I really enjoyed the movie. It had a real kind of Wes Anderson-y feel. To it. I loved the idea of confiding in a bird. What was it about this story and this project that when you first kind of got the screenplay, you thought, yeah, this is one I want to get involved in?
Yeah, well, like you said, the bird is one of those big kind of abstract ideas that was added in. Well, I mean, the difference of the film to the book, is that the book kind of established this character of James Whitman and kind of it kind of set the field. This film kind of puts him in a context, finding his lost sister, this journey, this struggle of finding his lost sister, despite also dealing with his own emotional struggles. And that I think that everyone can relate to. There's got to be something in your life, a total objective that you're trying to reach, and then there's something standing in between you and that thing. And for James, it's presently his overwhelming emotions. He doesn't have the tools to kind of manage them in the way that a lot of other people do, and the way that his father manages them, I don't think, as we see in the film, is as good an example as James might think from the beginning. And I think that's part of the root of the problem.
Did you get, I mean, obviously, there was that kind of Wes Anderson feel to, I'm sort of reluctant to say that too much.
Appreciate that you pointed. Okay.
But
I think some of the symmetry in the cinematography is very Robert Yeoman. I would like to give the credit to the cinematographer of Wes Anderson's films, because but I absolutely agree that Wes Anderson kind of style is definitely kind of an influence. I can't speak for the cinematographer or for Yaniv, but I can definitely see what you're talking about.
Yeah, did you get that from the screenplay? Those kind of, because I mean, it's such a stylistic film with such a great kind of visual, kind of takes us on such a visual journey, and there's so many kind of quirky moments that kind of take us out of the story.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that was something that kind of came across. Did you get a sense for how it would look when you first read the script?
Definitely, I got a sense for how it would look. I do think that there is a difference to note in the style of, because I have read some of Wes Anderson's screenplays. I mean, after, of course, the films have been released, just kind of like the Grand Budapest Hotel is one of my favorites. And the timing and the way that he writes it is very specific. And I would say that the screenplay was not as reminiscent of Wes Anderson films. However, the symbolism and the sort of method to the madness is extremely familiar, and that I totally get. But without having watched the film, just reading it straight off the bat, I would not have made that connection, I don't think. It was such an odd film when I first read it that I couldn't have related it to anything else I've read or watched. It was so unique in the regard of how it presented James's concepts and thoughts. It was all so much there to the audience. The idea of this bird, this manifestation of a character that he needed to rely on, and all the other kind of archetypes that he fell on during this entire this journey that he went on. They are very reminiscent of the kind of characters I think you might find in a Wes Anderson film, but very different in the method of symbolism, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like there's a kind of inner James in all of us. That kind of, I think we're all kind of guilty of daydreaming, and those kind of thoughts, I thought, were things. It almost felt like, yeah, we've all had those kind of feelings and emotions and thoughts, but often we sort of don't admit to it. And this character was almost like a kind of window into seeing how so many of our minds kind of work. Could you relate to James? Did you see much of yourself in the character at all?
Absolutely, I could see myself in James. I mean, from the moment I read the script, I think one of the things that intimidated me so much about the idea of kind of embarking on a project like this was the amount of emotional trial that I would be put through, because I knew what James was feeling. When I was reading these things, I had experienced things like this myself, not to the degree as they were presented, not to like the exact, instance, obviously, but I totally understand the stresses that he was going through. I have suffered from anxiety and emotional stress myself. And one of the things that I find really true is that he has the ability to face his emotions head on, that he has the ability to kind of meet them, and he might not know exactly what to do with them, though. He might not be able to kind of wrap his grip around them and manage them in the way that a lot of other people can. And that's how we watch him struggle. And I think that the bird and the symbolism of the labyrinth, it's all very suggestive of his mental state and kind of the way he thinks he has to maneuver about it, you know, and how he jumps straight to the conclusion that he's mentally ill because he can't manage his feelings. And I think that's so true with a lot of people. I mean, I don't think there's many people who read the script who could not relate to it. But part of the challenge was kind of bridging the gap in what I saw, how my anxiety presented itself in my life and how James's anxiety presented itself in his life. It was very Wes Anderson and very let's say sort of symbolic the way that it was presented in the film. But in my life, it's definitely more, I want to say karmic, less direct and a little more I don't know. I mean, you know how life is, man. It's just not like the movies. you know, things are just different, and the reactions are delayed when it comes to the effect you put out in the world and when it comes back to you. What I love about the film so much is as soon as you throw a stone into the river, the ripples will come right back at you, and you kind of see the result of it. And that's what's so great about kind of watching a condensed project like that. Something that someone has kind of like scoured over and worked really hard on, like I know Yaniv has, in order to make it kind of feel that way, in order for the audience to throw a pebble in and to receive that back, you know. But for sure, I related to James. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the character and the film kind of feels like it's sort of an example or sort of symbolic of a generation that are more willing to confront and talk about mental health issues. It's kind of less of a taboo, maybe. You know, is that something you kind of feel now, that people are kind of more likely, people of your age, to talk about your feelings rather than lock them away, like maybe older generations, maybe our parents' generations probably would have?
Yeah. You know, I think you're right, actually, because I do watch my parents. At least when I was younger, I watched them struggle a lot with maintaining their cool when they were under stressful situations. I don't think that has changed throughout the history of humanity. I do think that our ability to be aware of it and to manage it has changed. And I think you're definitely right. Your suggestion is correct in the regard of assuming that this generation now is probably looking at emotions in a different way. I really hope that this film does something for that someone can sit down and watch this film and be like, wow, like, even though, because it kind of is an extreme of how your emotions might present themselves, you know, the hardest potential possibility of what anxiety can do to you, you know, and then him being able to kind of live through it and then manage it in a way. I mean, you know what Superman did for people, or, you know, in the Depression, obviously I really do think that people nowadays have a lot more support in regards to the entertainment industry and social media. I'm really glad for the way people are using it. People are using platforms to kind of spread awareness about the fact that, well, you don't even need to kind of spread awareness about how to solve these issues. Just the fact that these issues exist is kind of a big enough solution in itself. My greatest mantra when it comes to dealing with my own emotions and stress is that simply being aware of their existence gives you the power over them. You know, having a sort of objective view of the way you feel, especially when it's anger and sadness and frustration and anxiety, it'll give you an extreme control over them and over your life eventually, because emotions are one of those things that drag you from one thing to the next if you don't, take hold of it.
Yeah. Well, maybe. And
yeah, for sure. I've seen that in my parents.
Yeah, I was going to say, because maybe having movies like this will help other people who watch it, who are younger, maybe realize they're not alone in having those thoughts and feelings as well, which is why films open the dialogue.
Hopefully something else has done that for them in the first place. But if not, Dr. Bird advice can change.
Yeah. But I mean, confiding in a bird makes sense to me, because I prefer animals to humans anyway. Have you ever had a pet and shared a kind of affiliation with a different species or a close bond with an animal?
I do really like that sort of personification of the pigeon in that way, how he talks about how he thinks that pigeons would be good listeners. And that's I think that's really cool. I totally get the idea of anthropomorphizing animals to their basic characters that we kind of see, you know, squirrels as these sort of scavengers kind of searching for things, and the birds as these sort of observers watching out overhead. And I think the idea that this bird has, well, obviously a bird's eye view of everything and is sort of removed from it is sort of his analogy for the needing to be removed from his own emotions. And so the pigeon's a great character, but I think that any person would have a different pigeon, would have a different animal in their lives, and maybe not even a bird. Because I do think that this bird is actually directly correlated to mechanisms that people use in their life right now to cope with emotions, whether it be non-physical or of an animal or of a physical object. Personally, I haven't really confided in any sort of pets or animals when it comes to my stress and anxiety. I do, however, find comfort in treating all the living things around me, not just as I would want to be treated, but sort of with as much kindness as I can. I like making people and things around me feel warm and comfortable. I guess just because I would like to feel warm and comfortable if I was in my own presence, you know. Again, I really do think that people tend to personify their pets and the animals in their lives in a way that suits them for their own emotional struggles, and also for social interactions. I find a lot of the time, I know, you know, the common stereotype where people look like their dogs as they're walking down the street, you know, or 101 Dalmatians kind of vibe. But I really do think that there tends to be like a habit of people to sort of have conversations through their pets. You know what I mean? Where someone will be walking down the street, and if you might not be comfortable having a conversation with a random stranger, but if they come up and pet your dog, you know, then a whole, like, it opens up a can of worms in that way. And I've had people actually say things to me through their animals. Like, they'll be petting their dog, be like, "Oh my goodness, it's so nice to meet you," or something like that. Like, you know, they won't be saying it to me, but I'm like, "Did you just meet your dog?" Or I'm confused. You know, I don't know if people notice it, but we very unconsciously sort of place our feelings and our ideals onto our animals. I don't want to say our animals. The way that I see these other creatures in this planet is kind of just as, I really don't think that one animal should own another. But because we have a sort of inability to understand their thoughts and a sort of power over them in the sense that we feed them and house them and shelter them, you know, we can kind of, they reflect our actions. They reflect our characteristics. And in that way, I think that a dog that you have been taking care of your whole life may not be the best therapist for you, because not only do they can't see things quite from a different perspective than you can, but also this pigeon wasn't the best mechanism for him to use to cope with these emotions, because again, it wasn't outside of himself. He was not yet capable of removing himself from those feelings, but you did notice that there was a part of himself that could, and that was what he placed inside the pigeon, you know. And that's what that pigeon was doing for him, was kind of and analyzing everything he did when he thought that he wasn't doing it, you know. So because he thought he was incapable, so when he created the pigeon, there was a part of his life that was capable of it. And you see that throughout the entire film, you know, all of these things that are presented to you that don't seem so non-fictional are direct correlations to the way he's feeling. You know, we kind of see his world presented to us directly. You're seeing it through his mind, not just his eyes, you know.
Yeah, I talk to my dog all the time.
Yeah.
And you're right about owners looking at their dogs. I'm probably a bit hairier than my dog. But my final question before I go, because I just wanted to just quickly say about something about the cast. I mean, Taylor is she's really proving to be one of the kind of biggest up and coming stars in the industry, with some amazing turns. And also, I just wanted to ask about Jason as well, and as another collaborator, because I've interviewed him a few times. He's really bloody lovely, isn't he, Jason?
Yeah.
I mean, they both.
Yeah. He's not only fun, but he's funny to be on set with. He was just so non-brute like. like his character was, but he was so good at playing the brute, you know. But when he was off camera, he was just the kindest, softest guy. I mean, he was just so nice. I mean, literally. Oh yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Cool, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Lucas. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,